excited to dive in to today. Actually, not that excited, if I'm honest, because almost every time I have spoken on the concept of suffering, I have gone through something terrible. So, let's see, the last few times I've spoken on this, the first time I spoke on it, I tore my ACL building up to the message. The second time I spoke on it, I had colon spasms while I was speaking, to the point that I almost passed out while speaking. The third time I spoke on it, I got shingles just before I spoke on suffering. So this time I was like, I'm going to hold off on my prep on this one until closer to time. No, I'm just kidding. But this topic really matters. And you guys asked simply the question, which is the big question. It's the question that shipwrecks a lot of people's faith. It's the question that causes many people to distance themselves from Christianity. And so as we jump into this one today, this is not just a light-hearted topic. Although I love to have fun and hang out with you guys, I want to dive into this one honestly. And so let's look at the big question you guys asked. If God is all-powerful, why does he let bad things happen to good people? Now first, we got to break down the question to be able to understand what we're even asking, right? So the first question is if, or the first word is if, and so even when we see the word if, we should go, okay, so who's the judge? Who's deciding whether this is right or wrong? Is our people the judge? Is my feelings the judge? What's the answer for if, right? And then we say God. Now that already begins to kind of sink this down a little bit more, because when we say God, we're probably talking about a monotheistic God, not Hinduism, Buddhism that has many gods, or the pantheon of gods. Instead, we're talking about if there's one God, and then we said if he's all-powerful. All is a word attributed to the Christian God of omni. He's omnipotent, means all-powerful. He's omniscient, which means all-knowing. He's omnipresent, which means he's everywhere at all times. And then omnibenevolent, which means he is all good. And so in all these alls, right? So we start here. So if there's one God and he's all powerful, why would he allow, or why does he let? Now, there's a whole deep dive into that one that I'm not going to go into today. How does God interact with creation? Does he force all things to happen? Does he allow things to happen? Does he let things happen and then he just responds to what happens? That's been the great Christian debate ever since this whole thing began, right? The sovereignty of God, predestination, free will, all this stuff. So we're not diving fully into that, but there is this idea of if he has all powerful, why does he allow certain things to happen? But then we're asking, why does he let bad things happen to good people? So when we say bad things, what bad things? How do we even know what's bad, right?
Did you want us to answer?
I'll ask some more later, but yeah, I mean, what bad things come to your mind?
Death.
Death, yeah. Why does he let death happen? Why does he let disease happen? Why does he let earthquakes happen? Hurricanes happen, yeah. Yeah, why does he let people do terrible things in the world? And why can things happen to you? And why do things happen because of you? So there's a lot. And then we ask this question. We're going to dive into bad things a lot more in this message. But in the idea of good people. So, what's your standard for a good person? Like how good actually categorizes as good? Is it more good than bad? Is it like some standard that you made up, or is there an objective standard? Like, where do we find this idea of good people? Well, as we jump into this, you see that this is a complicated question. Like, there's not just a really quick answer. Instead, we've got to kind of wade into it a little bit, although I hope at the end I can equip you with an answer that helps drive great discussion with whoever might bring this question to you in the future as well. So, I actually believe if we understand the sinful tendencies of mankind and our natural struggles as people, we would probably ask the opposite question. We would ask, if God's good, why would he allow good things to happen to bad people? Because that's even a more fascinating question. If mankind walked away from God, as the biblical story tells us, and said, God, we don't want you in our lives, why would God stick around with his goodness and his grace? Why wouldn't he just fully distance himself from creation? So that helps even flip it, and we also have to ask the question, as we approach life, is there actually objectively more good or more evil that we experience in this life? What do you think? Like, the fact that we're breathing is good, but there's bad things that happen in the world simultaneously all the time, right? And so good and bad are not always as clear as we might think they are. Has anybody ever had something bad happen to them that turned out for good? Okay, we'll talk through that some more too. So, it's this weird combination. So, first off, as Americans, we have this thing called the assumption of stability. Here's what that means. Many other cultures around the world don't expect good. They actually expect pain. They expect struggle. We expect comfort and ease. And anything that's not that, all of a sudden we feel like that's really bad. And so if you understand, again, Hinduism, Buddhism, they actually see life as a prison. And in this prison, they're hoping to escape the rebirth cycle or the pain associated with life. And so nirvana or enlightenment are escaping. So that is a whole different mindset than the way that we would approach this idea of good and evil. Now, how does atheism explain bad things that happen? You see, every worldview has to actually answer this question. Bad things and suffering. Atheism would say, you just got unlucky. Because in this random collision of particles and atoms, it just didn't work out for you. Which is a pretty hopeless reality too. Because see, everybody's got to answer, where did suffering and evil and pain and all this stuff come from? And here's what I've learned in the process of dealing with this question. This is not a philosophical, theological conversation normally. It's actually an emotional one. Right? Because we're not asking the question out of some theory. We're asking the question out of a felt experience of pain, right? Who's experienced something hard in your life ever? Okay? So we all have to wrestle with this question. This question isn't just like, what do I think? It's actually, what do I feel about this? And if we're really honest, I think the true question is this. The true question is, if God really loved me, you need to hit the next one. God, if you love me, why would you let this happen? Have you ever felt that before? God, if you really care, why am I going through this right now? Why is this so hard? And I don't wade into this question lightly because I've been through really hard stuff. Like, when I say bad things, I don't just talk about an idea. I mean, my wife and I both went through 2 miscarriages that were really difficult. I lost my brother to a really long cancer journey. And so as I think about this question, I'm not just speaking from the head, I'm feeling it from my heart, going, God, I struggle to understand. I struggle to understand how this all works. And if you actually read the Bible, one of the cool parts is God's not offended by your struggle. Actually, have you ever read the Psalms? Anybody ever read this? You know, half, if not more than half of the Psalms are really David going, I don't understand. God, this is hard. Where are you? Why is this not different? And he wrestles with God. Do you know the name Israel literally means the one who wrestles with God? And so in this, we're invited to wrestle with God in honesty. And so, as we jump in, we're often asking really the question, who's to blame? Where did all this pain come from? What's the problem? Right? Whose fault is it? And this happened in the religious society that Jesus came into and spoke into. There's actually in John 9, it says, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Because, what do we naturally ask? Whose fault is it? Who's to blame? And he says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, although did him and his parents sin?
Yes.
Yes, but he's saying that's not the issue. It's not about who sinned, but this happened that the works of God might be displayed in him. And so here's what we're seeing Jesus say. That in the greater story, there's actually a redemptive plan. That even in pain, it's not the whole story. The suffering that you're walking through, the struggle that you're experiencing, it might feel huge and unsolvable, yet it's not the whole story. There's more. There's more always going on. So, let's dive into that a little bit. So there's two types of evil that are experienced in this earth. And so you guys mentioned a couple of them. So, two main categories. There are natural evil and moral evil. I don't know if you've heard these terms, these are theology terms, but natural evil is the type of stuff that happens because the world's broken. Like, it's not my fault that an earthquake hit another country, right? It's not my fault that a hurricane came through and destroyed parts of Florida. And there's diseases, there's brokenness in the world that's simply the natural evil that exists. And then there's moral evil. Moral evil is where humans do things to other humans or start cycles that end up affecting other people. And so moral evil is humans affecting humans. And if we're honest, a lot of us, some of our problems are just our own dumb fault, right? Like, we create our own problems. Like, when I hit myself in the head with a pickaxe one day working on trying to get tree roots out, right? And so, that was my own stupid fault. And so, in the process, we've done things to ourselves, and yet, overall, natural evil, all of evil goes back to what? In the biblical record, what does it all go back to?
The fall.
The what?
The fall.
The fall. Yeah, so the big term that we use is, first off, creation says that everything was created perfect, right? God made all things good. What happened from there? Mankind looked at God and said, God, we don't really need you. We've got it from here. And this is what we call the fall. The fall broke everything. It broke the created order. It broke man's relationship with God, man's relationship with each other, and man's relationship with creation itself. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So from the fall, everything broke. And so in that, the curse is what comes next. The curse brought... Do you guys know what the curse was? God spoke the curse. What is that? What came out of that? Anybody help me out? What came out of the curse? Yeah.
I could be wrong. What comes to mind is when he talks to Adam and he says, like, your work will be... Because Adam already had a job to cultivate the earth and to farm and nurture what God gave him. But now he's saying, okay, like, I gave you this nice carefree thing, but now you have to work for it and you have to put in, like, blood, sweat, tears into this thing. And, like, this is the choice that you made.
Yeah, at that point it was fruitful work, and then it turned into toil.
Yeah.
Toil, this endless work that was never quite done. I was ripping out honeysuckle this weekend out of my house, like my backyard area. Has anybody ever done yard work? If you're going after stumps and roots, it's terrible, back-breaking work, right? And that's the toil side of things. Things that actually used to be easy are now hard. And then, so we get toil, and we get enmity, or we get fighting between people. People are going to try to rule over each other after the curse. This is part of the curse. And then the last part is everybody's going to die. We were made to live forever. Did you guys know that? That's the reason death feels so unnatural. Death hurts so much because we weren't made for that. We were made for something greater than that. So in the curse, we actually see the cause of this ripple effect of the fall, and we're still falling. The fall is not just breaking that moment, it's actually cosmic and generational. So I don't know your exact suffering. I don't claim to be able to understand fully what you've gone through. But I can say I've been through quite a bit myself. I can go through my body and tell you an injury in almost every spot that I've walked through. I can tell you weird sicknesses and long-term illnesses that I've faced. And I can also tell you I've experienced death and pain and struggle. And in the midst of that, I remember just being knocked down on my couch for months on end, where I got to process through pain. I got to read the book by C.S. Lewis, The Problem of Pain. And one of his great quotes in that book is he says, God whispers up to us in our pleasures. He shouts to us in our pain. It's his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And so what I learned, how many of you would say you're more aware of God, or you're praying a lot more when you're going through something hard? Anybody say that? Yeah? So many times it actually gets our attention. Sometimes the danger of things going really well is we start to think, I don't really need God. Actually, I'm the one that made all this good stuff happen, so I'm pretty great. So instead, we wrestle with this stuff, we pray, and we seek God, and the Bible is filled with us. Does anybody in Scripture have a just comfortable life that they kind of ease their way all the way to heaven? I don't know that biblical story. And yet our assumption of stability is we think that's what ours is supposed to be, right? Instead, we have an earthly experience that's filled with a combination of chaos and struggle. So Psalms, Job, Lamentations, the Gospels, and James. James is the brother of Jesus who writes these verses. And this is what we're going to unpack a little bit together today. I think this is a great kind of guide for us in suffering. James 1, 2 through 3 is what we're going to look at real quick. And it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Now, let's break this one down just like we broke down the question. Pure joy. When do you experience pure joy? Sorry, help me out. It's not that hard. When do you experience pure joy? Ice cream. Ice cream's some pure joy moments. What else? Hanging out with friends, right? Hanging out with friends, laughing, having a good time. Maybe you got to go on a vacation you always wanted to experience. Yeah. Yeah. You're being celebrated. Life's good, right? So, pure joy doesn't sound like trials of many kinds, does it? But this is what James is saying. He's like, actually, if we have a greater perspective, we would begin to consider it joy, even when we go through hard things. And I don't know about you, but I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I don't really want that. But trials of many kinds. Let's think through some of those. So there's three main types: trials I cause, trials someone else causes, and trials from the brokenness of the world. So when I tore my ACL, was that somebody else's fault? When I was playing soccer, it was actually my fault. I made a decision while playing that a guy made a bad touch, and I tried to change direction real quick. My cleat stuck in the turf, and my knee just snapped. It was terrible. So in that, I had a full year recovery, and I had way too much about my identity in soccer. God taught me so much about who I am and where my value is found because of who He is, not because of what I can do for Him. And so, ACL tear, trials someone else caused. When I got my wisdom tooth out one time, they hit a nerve, and my entire lower lip was numb, and I drooled on myself for like a month. And so I was like, God, I'm like a speaker. I can't really drool on myself all the time. I don't know how this is going to work. And so that's something somebody else caused. I didn't do it, but it happened to me. I got a severe concussion one time where I was also knocked down for over a month or two, where I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who my wife was. I didn't know who my kids were for a little while. It was intense. And it's because somebody else hit me. And I didn't see that coming. So I couldn't blame myself, but then I got shingles and all kinds of weird viruses in my life. Shingles was terrible. I can't even tell you the stories of that, but I was walking like an old man like this. Like that's about as fast as I could go while I had shingles because it hit my lymph nodes and went inside, and I had about an entire, each one of these ones that I'm telling you, the doctors looked at me and they were like, we don't know how long this is going to last. We hope it goes away, but it might not. And so each time I'm like, really? This is crazy. And so in the midst of that, he says, consider it pure joy. And I can tell you on the flip side, God has redeemed many of those things by creating compassion in me for others. And he's taught me more about who he is and who I am than I might have ever learned through just the casual, good experiences of life. That doesn't make them good. Those are still really hard, really terrible things. And I can tell you, losing my brother to cancer, I don't have like an answer that makes that good. But I do know that God is good even when my circumstances aren't. And I do know that he can be an anchor even when nothing else is. And it says that it's growing something in us. The testing of your faith. Let's process that real quick. How do you know how strong somebody is? What's your way to know how strong somebody is? How do you figure it out? Yeah. Yeah, you're about to answer. Okay. Yeah. Let's just think even physically. How do you know how strong somebody's,
Like you go to like the YMCA or something where you're doing bench press, but
you put the weight on, right? The weight's on, and all of a sudden you can figure out, are they as strong as they... Have you ever had anybody talk themselves up beyond what they actually could do?
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, let's test that out, right? Let's just go put that, well, you see, today I didn't stretch, or I got hurt yesterday, whatever. And so the only way you know how strong they are is when the weight's actually put on them. And that's physically, it's obvious. It's like you say you can bench press 200, but it looks like you're about 120, whatever that is. So in the midst of that, here's the reality of our faith. How do we know how strong our faith is? I would say it's only when you're walking through trials that it's either real or it's not. In the casual coasting of pleasure, your faith isn't as tested. But it's when you go through pain that it's like this is either real or it's not. We draw near to God in the midst of that. But it's developing perseverance. Now, let's process perseverance real quick. Have you ever trained for anything? Is it bad things that make things better? The only way you get better at running is by what? Running, right? You have to run a long ways, tear your body down, and your body builds back stronger. And then you do it again, and you build back a little stronger. And this is the way it all works physically, but it's also spiritually, emotionally, relationally happening too. Often things are being tested by the trials and struggles of life, and it's we're going to see how deep that commitment really goes. We're going to see how real this thing actually is. Trials have the ability to build us or break us, to make us bitter or better, to strengthen or sever, or to sharpen or to shatter. And this is all based on which way we go in the trial. I know people who've walked away from their faith because of trials. And I know people who are stronger than they've ever been because they've gone through trials. And so the decision is often, are you going to look up? Or are you just going to get frustrated? Because James 1:4 says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Okay? So, in the midst of this, perseverance is being produced in you, and then you grow up into an even deeper sense of who God is. You know his heart for you. You know his love for you. You know your identity. You know what's available to you, and he's going to make every wrong thing right. Do you guys actually know that? That God is actually sovereign and he's good? And every wrong thing that's ever happened to you, he's going to judge that. And every good thing you've ever done, every act of faith, he's going to reward that in the end. So even though in this life it might not all make sense, in the end it will. And he will make all things right. He will restore all things to the way they were supposed to be. So, 2 ways we respond. Naturally, your response to pain. What normally happens when you get hurt? Are you happy about it at first? No, this is real life. You know what? Naturally, pain makes you mean. Do you know that? How many of you, after you were hurt, are kind of a jerk to people around you? Right? It's kind of like a wounded cat. A wounded cat, you go to try to help the cat, and all of a sudden you get the claws, right? And so in our lives, pain makes us kind of mean if we're feeling something. But supernaturally, something different can happen. So if you're only living in the natural, you're just going to become more angry, more bitter, more frustrated, and you're going to let everybody around you feel it. Supernaturally, however, it draws us to our knees in humility. Pain actually causes us to recognize that we're not the answer. And we come and say, God, I need you. I need you to meet me in my struggle. I need you to help me in my pain. And here's the 2 questions I've learned to ask in the struggle and the pain. 1, I begin to ask God, where are you in this? God, help me see your presence. Help me see that you're with me. I need to know that I'm not alone. And then the second side is, God, help me to see your redemption. Help me to see that you're going to bring something good out of this pain. And help me to trust your timing in how you're going to do that. So 1, I want to see you, God. And 2, I trust you're going to make it good. I ask that you would let me see the good that you can bring out of this painful thing. And so then, let's talk real quick about pain gains. You guys know pain, no gain, right? And the way Andy Stanley said it, he said, you have pain without gain? What a shame, right? We can grow from these things. We can experience. Each time I've gone through pain, pain reveals my idols. It reveals to my heart that I have a lot of things that I expect that actually take the place of God. Pain restores my identity. My idols and my identity are usually tied together. And so when I recognize that I'm a child of God, loved, not for what I do, but because I'm his, pain refines my faith. It helps me know if I actually believe this stuff or not. Pain renews my compassion for others. I begin to know what it's like to go through pain and not just talk from my head, but from my heart. And pain reminds me of reality, that I'm really fragile. Do you guys know that every one of us, our hearts could stop in a moment? Like, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And it reminds me that I'm really fragile each time I go through pain. That whatever's holding me together, like, we all think we're invincible for so long until life happens. And we're like, oh, actually, I'm just a second away, possibly. And that doesn't mean live in fear, it just means live in reality. That there's more to this whole life than just what I'm experiencing right now. Paul Tripp said it this way. He said, you see, weakness is not what you and I should be afraid of. We should fear our delusion of strength. And what he's saying is we all think we're really strong, but suffering reveals our weakness. It doesn't create it, right? Suffering doesn't make us weak. It just says, actually, you've been weak the whole time, but now you know it. And so in the pain, we're going, God, I need you. And that's actually really good for our hearts. So let's go back to the question really quick. If God is all-powerful, why would he let bad things happen to good people? And here's what I respond to people when they ask me that question. I say, that's an interesting question. Do you know it's only happened one time? And they're like, what? I'm like, well, there's actually only one moment in history where there was a truly good person that truly evil things happened to. And his name was Jesus. Jesus, the only one who actually was good, went through the most horrific pain of all to restore all people back to the good God that they were created for in the first place. And so this question actually doesn't come from a distant God who doesn't understand human suffering. It actually comes from a present God who stepped into human experience and experienced the depth of suffering that you and I will never even fully experience. So we find it said this way in Hebrews 4, we do not have a high priest who's unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who's been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. And he did not falter. He passed the test. And then it says, let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. And so Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, is the one who went through absolute horrific pain to empathize with us in our pain and connect us back to God over and over again. So God's all powerful. Why would he allow bad things to happen to good people? Well, in Jesus, it was part of his rescue plan to bring us back to him and to make us aware of his goodness. Do you see how the question is meant to basically break down, is God real? But actually, there's no question that actually demonstrates the reality of God more than Jesus himself becoming death and pain in our place to connect us back to the one who loved us and created us in the first place. Is that good news?
Yes, sir.
And so what is meant to take people away from God is really the thing that I see draws us back to him more than ever before. So pain is not always to be avoided. It's actually meant to be in the process. Say, God, I embrace you in the midst of my pain, and I'm wanting to know you better and love you more. I need to know that you're near. I need your grace and mercy to meet me in my time of need. And I'm going to cling to you through this trial, through this struggle. I just recognize time. Shoot. We have a closing song. I was going to say text in your questions and thoughts. And even if you want to, you can, throughout this week, if you have some thoughts in this area that you want to text in, I have a Google Voice number, so this all comes in anonymous to me. And I can respond to some of your things. Because I don't know your pain. I don't know your exact struggle. But here's what I know. There's a God who does. Because he actually is omniscient. He actually is omnipresent. He actually was with you when you went through some of the hardest things of your life. He doesn't claim to save you from it. But he does claim, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. And I'm with you and I'm here for you. And I will be one that will give you grace and give you mercy to meet you in your time of need. So I don't know about you, I still struggle with what James said. I don't consider it pure joy in the moment. But as I look back on my life, I actually realize God felt closer to me in my pain than any other time in my life. And so maybe it is the greater joy. Maybe it is something worth holding on to. And approaching not just with, God, let this be over, but maybe approach it with, God, I want to know that you're near. And so we're going to sing a closing song in response, where we're going to recognize that even through Jesus' sacrifice, it was always about restoring us back to God. It was always about bringing us back to his goodness. So I don't know what you're walking through today, but suffering reveals our weakness. It is not created. It's been there all along. And the fragility of life can remind us to anchor ourselves into the hope of heaven. That this place, this earth, is not our home. We were made for somewhere way better than this. But there's a very present God, a very real God, who's with you in your struggle. And he wants to draw you back to his heart for you. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to sing. But as we sing, if you need to receive prayer, I would be glad to pray for you. I know my wife Ashley's in the back, and Ashley Brewer's in the other side back. We're all glad to support you as you go through whatever you're walking through. And so let's just pray. God, thank you so much that you sent Jesus not as one to scold us for our struggle, not as one to tell us what we're doing wrong, but one that would meet us in our pain, in our struggle, in the depth of the brokenness of humanity, and offer us life, offer us grace, offer us your divine mercy to meet us in our weakness and connect us back to you. God, you kept pursuing even when we turned away. And so wherever each person is today, God, I pray that you would draw